All right, so this is a bit more of an advanced tracking lesson within the color tab. I'm going to be showing you guys how we can get an accurate track on this clip, even though there are occlusions in it. Occlusions are basically just any object that get in the way of the camera and the subject that you're trying to track. So in this case, this beam right here is an occlusion. And then we also got an occlusion right here too. So it happens twice. Now, normally if we tried to track our clip forward, if we tried to track this window forwards here, what would happen is it would freak out as soon as we get to this occlusion because all of our tracking data is now gone, right? There's no more tracking data in this area, so it's gonna freak out and not know what to do. So in this lesson, I wanna show you guys how we can fix these types of situations. So let's navigate to a frame where we can see our entire subject. And let's make this window a bit smaller here. Cool. That looks good to me. Maybe I'll rotate it a bit. And let's just track forwards and see what happens here. We can see, I'll stop it, the mask decided to follow that beam. So we lost the tracking points that were around me, and it decided to get pushed by this beam over here. So obviously that's not what we want. So what we want to do is navigate to the point right before the beam gets in the way of our track. So what we're going to want to do down here in our tracker is go to frame. And at this point, we're going to want to add a keyframe. So we can add a keyframe here just by moving our window a tiny bit. And what we're going to want to do now is draw a bounding box around the rest of our track over here. And we're going to click these three dots in the top right and select clear selected track data. That way it kind of resets it. Now we're going to move our playhead forwards a little bit so that we're past this occlusion. And then we're going to want to move this window a tiny bit again. And then from here, we can track forwards again. So that looks good. Now let's go back to where we started over here. So from this point, and let's start tracking backwards and see what happens. So let's click that track backwards button. Oh, and it looks like it kind of almost worked, but it didn't work well enough to continue tracking. So let's go back to the point just before the track messes up. So right here, this looks good. Since we're in the frame option here, let's just move this a tiny bit to add a keyframe here. And let's move backwards now. And we'll add another keyframe right here. And we're going to clear all of the tracking data before this point right here. So we'll do the same thing. We'll draw a bounding box around this area right here. And we'll go to those three dots up here, clear selected track data. We can see that we've removed that keyframe over here. And now from this point, we can continue tracking backwards. And it looks like it latched on to that beam again. So let's go back over here. Let's clear this track data again. Clear selected track data. Let's move one frame over here and let's move this window a little bit. I think because we were still close to the beam was still within our window over here. I guess it latched onto it and kind of messed things up. So we'll go to this point here and now we can track backwards. And that looks pretty good to me. It's doing a pretty decent job. Awesome. And just like that, we've managed to track this window to our subject here, even though there's two occlusions in this one shot, and we managed to get a pretty good track here. So if we wanted to make any kind of specific changes to just our subject here, we can do that freely because we have a window that's tracked to him throughout the entire scene. Now in this situation, I don't exactly know what we would do here, but if we wanted to make any kind of changes to the inside of this window, so maybe like, I don't know, something like temperature or tint or whatever, we can do that. And we know that we have a solid track. So this is a really cool feature of the tracker that's built into the color tab. So being able to go into our tracker over here and get visual data with this graph over here and select parts of our track and delete them is huge. This is a feature that I'm not used to having in other programs, and it just shows me how forward thinking DaVinci is when it comes to things like this. I love the fact that we can go in and visually see where our track messes up in this graph area over here and make the manual changes that we need, but still continue to use the tracker for any points that we want to. So it's like we've basically combined the auto tracking with manual tracking to get the absolute best result possible in this situation. I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson. I'll see you in the next one.